This was a highly calculated plan. But today, investigators still have no motive for it, and they are asking for the public's help. Joining me right now, former FBI agent Art Pfizenmayer. Art, was this just a psychotic guy who did a psychotic thing? I mean, do you think there's anything more to it than that?
Trish, when you have a lone gunman like this, it goes just completely off the rails. It's probably going to take a very long time to really come up with any valid conclusions as to, what the underlying causes were. He showed some expertise with firearms that they must be digging into right now as we speak. And then, of course, the FBI is going to be doing a forensic analysis of this guy's finances to see how those may have figured into him just going completely crazy here and opening fire on that completely defenseless crowd.
Yeah. I mean, I think Americans are struggling, right? Anyone who sees this wants to try and be able to make sense of it. So initially when ISIS came forward and twice claimed that he was a soldier for them, that was something that people could kind of wrap their heads around. But then increasingly, we heard from law enforcement, there's really just no evidence to suggest that is or was the case. And so maybe it's just ISIS desperately reaching out, trying to claim something because they are increasingly under so much pressure and being forced to retreat. But I think people are looking for closure, right? It's a natural thing. And I guess I would just ask you, how often do you get closure in, this is obviously the worst in history, but in these kinds of sorts of things?
When you have a lone wolf attacker like this, getting final definitive closure is probably almost impossible. You can come to the conclusion on a number of different areas as to why certain actions may have taken place. I mean, this crazy man showed an incredible expertise in firearms alone. When I looked at some of the very early videotapes, one of the things that I noticed right away was there was no muzzle flash coming from the Mandalay windows where he was. That meant he was standing back in the room so that the muzzle flash wasn't visible from the ground. That made it so hard for the first responders to figure out what action to take because they didn't know where they were taking fire from.
Well,
the only good side, the good side about that, Trish, was that this guy back in the room firing long weapons with the muzzle velocity that they had must have been shaking the fillings out of the nearby rooms. Yeah. So identifying where he was able to take place very quickly.
Well, they also were able to use the fire alarm detection system to figure that out as well. Anyway,
sure.
It's a tragedy with a whole lot of questions still. Art, thank you for joining us with your insight today.